My name is Landon Simpson, and welcome to Inside the Silver Screen, an insight into all things cinema. On today's episode, we are back in the studio for the first time. We have a nice mix of some studio stuff along with some of our traditional format. So we'll start with a preview of the Best Picture Oscar nominations this coming Sunday with KBVR-TV's very own Kevin Foster. And then we'll go into how Quentin Tarantino created one of the most entertaining movies of all time with Pulp Fiction. And then we'll end the show by looking at the legendary life of cinematographer Roger Deakins. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my fellow cinephile, Kevin Foster.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, so we'll start with Promising Young Woman. So Promising Young Woman is the first film from new writer and director Emerald Fennell. So it tells a story about a 30-year-old woman played by Carey Mulligan who has a previous history with sexual abuse, and she's really wanting to avenge her past. What I really liked about this movie, I think it was a well-written black comedy. I think it was disturbing at times, but it also made you laugh. It was really well written. I think it got the point across as well as differing its tone. Sometimes the tone was a little bit across the board, which worked to detract from the main point, but I think overall it's a strong debut, and I think Emerald Fennell has a strong future in front of her.
Yeah, I think the movie had a really great cast, and it was some more up-and-coming actors and actresses, so I think that's something nice to see, but overall, I think the movie was a little bit more excitement than drama, and that's not necessarily what we're looking for in an Oscar, but overall, a really great film. But I think a movie that tends to have a little bit more of a chance at winning that Best Picture is The Trial of the Chicago 7, which is written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, and it follows this plot of the Chicago 7 in 1968 in a trial of anti-Vietnam War protesters, and they were convicted of crossing state lines and inciting a riot. There's a lot of great court scenes with this awesome ensemble cast, and they all come together, and a lot of tension boils up and heats over, and it's one of those great ensemble movies to see at the Oscars, and I think it definitely has a chance up there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think the dialogue shines, as it always is gonna with Aaron Sorkin. He's a master of dialogue. I think Sorkin has also improved as a director since the 2017 directing debut Molly's Game, and I think the best part of the movie comes with the cross-cutting in the third act between the riot and the argument between Eddie Redmayne's character and Sacha Baron Cohen's character. But another film that's a little bit more on the serious side is The Father. It's directed by French playwright Florian Zeller. It definitely kind of feels like a play. It is a little bit more surreal, though, than a play. The editing techniques really shine through because it accomplishes things that a play would not be able to. Olivia Colman, they play a father and a daughter. The father's going through dementia. I think Anthony Hopkins gives a performance for the ages, especially in those last 10 minutes. Overall, a great watch. It's very touching.
Yeah, and I think the experimental elements with that editing makes the movie much better, and that emotionally gripping subject matter brings it up there for the Oscars, but I think mainly we're probably going to be looking more at Anthony Hopkins potentially winning a Best Actor award here, but overall, I think sometimes it's not necessarily the most engaging story, but it's definitely a good movie still.
Yeah, 100%. One of the more engaging movies of the year is Judas and the Black Messiah, directed and written by Shaka King. It has a little bit of overlap with the Trial of the Chicago 7 story. They both mention the events of the other, and so it's interesting that two of the movies that were kind of around the same thing were both nominated. I think the pace is really well done. It's very entertaining throughout. It never loses the attention of the audience. And I think that Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton and Lakeith Stanfield as William O'Neill give performances of the year, two of the best performances, both nominated for best supporting actor. And I think Lakeith has a particularly bright future ahead of him.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as you said, definitely one of the more engaging stories of the year. And what I really liked about the movie was how the internal conflict with O'Neill really gave Stanfield a ton of room to grow as an actor and just give an amazing performance. So yeah, I think that was a really great story. But the next movie on our list is Nomadland, which is written and directed by Chloe Zhao. It's about a woman named Fern, played by Frances McDormand, whose zip code is shut down due to economic struggles, and she basically she decides to take up the van life, and it's kind of like a little bit like Into the Wild, but she goes out and has to deal with various different struggles and meets a lot of cool people along the way. It's a very emotionally gripping story. Sometimes the pacing can feel a little slow in the first half, but I think it really rounds itself out in the second half and brings together a great performance for some potential Oscars for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, especially with the points about the pacing. I think its story just lacked a motivated plot. I think it needed a little bit more push and pace. But I do agree as well with Into the Wild comparison. it's just a slower and more subtle, poetic, sparse version of Into the Wild for an older generation. It's also very topical at the moment with all the financial struggles due to COVID, so I think that could really make a push for Best Picture, and we'll get to a little bit more about that later. And then another famed director, David Fincher, came out with Mank this year. It stars Gary Oldman as screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz, who was the writer of Citizen Kane. It's just all about his experiences writing, and it's a technical masterpiece, to be quite honest, because it's made using the exact same methods as they would make a movie in 1940s. So it also reminds you as to why we don't make movies like that anymore. It feels dated, clearly. I know that's the point, but it's just doesn't hit the right spot for the viewer, I don't think, at least for me. But I think it just needed to go a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah, I think it's a great period piece. It really focuses on that element, but it's not necessarily the most engaging story again, but it's one of those ones that it's reflecting on a really cool time in movie history, but I don't really think it's going to be up there for the Oscar. Yeah. And then kind of our sort of story we're not thinking it's really going to get an Oscar is The Sound of Metal, but we both seem to love this movie quite a bit. It's directed by Darius Marder, and it's about a heavy metal drummer who loses his ability to hear and all the struggles that he has to go with to cope with that, journeys of misunderstanding and acceptance and going back and forth. I think it's a very close look at one of our characters, and it really rounds itself out in the end. And I just think it didn't necessarily as a whole come together for me, but I think the ending scene, it was maybe a bit of an untraditional character arc that I really enjoyed, and I'd like to see maybe Riz Ahmed up for Best Actor on that one.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said. I think Riz Ahmed is my choice for Best Actor. I know I talked about Anthony Hopkins earlier, but I think Riz Ahmed does a lot with the role that maybe some actors couldn't really do. It's a very specific role, a heavy metal drummer that goes deaf. It's it's very unique, and it's also just a touch. We use the word touching so much, but it really is a story about acceptance in the face of conflict and coming to terms with the trauma and struggles that you've been going through. We'll get more into it later when we kind of sum everything up with our predictions, but I really enjoyed this movie, one of my favorites. And the last movie of the 8 Best Picture nominees is Minari. So Minari is directed and written by Lee Isaac Chung. It's about a Korean family who moves into Nebraska with the American dream of starting a successful farm. It's really heavily based off of Lee Isaac Chung's own experiences as a child. He really wrote what he knew, and I really admire from that. It seems like Korean directors are, really breaking through these last couple of years with Parasite, taking home all of the awards last year with Bong Joon-ho. And I think something that's really characteristic of Korean directors is really writing what they know. And I admire that, and I think it really comes through, and it works well with Minari.
For sure. And I think I don't want to have A24 syndrome with this movie, but these are kind of the emotional dramas that I really like to get into. And I think Minari is a great film, but I don't know that it really does enough in terms of diversifying itself from some of the messages that we've seen before. And I just think as a whole, it's amazing, but it's not. I don't know that it's quite there for the Best Picture, but it's in there, so we never know.
Yeah, I mean, we can hope that it'll get a bit more of a chance. But I think to sum everything up, I think that Nomadland's gonna probably walk away with it. I don't know I know we were talking about it a little bit before, but I think the performance by McDormand, the directing from Chloe Zhao, as well as the topical nature of it with all the financial struggles today, I think the cinematography is great. I think overall it's a favorite to win. I would like to see Sound of Metal come away with it. I think that was my favorite movie of the year. I think it was one of the most well done of the year, and I don't know what you think about that.
I think despite the pacing problems that I kind of felt with at least the first half of the movie, it reminds me a little bit of outside Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and which I believe won a few years ago, and it's just kind of as a whole it maybe is a little shaky for me, but I think it's really kind of has what the Oscars are looking for with that awesome performance from Frances McDormand. It's got this emotional story and great drama, and I think it really comes together in the second half, and I just think that it's got all those pieces and it's differentiated itself enough, especially in cinematography and the visual storytelling, and I think that'll probably put it over the edge to win the Oscar.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, I guess we'll just have to see if Chloe Zhao's Nomadland really does come away with Best Picture. The Oscars are this Sunday at 5 p.m., so tune in if you want to see if our predictions are correct, or maybe watch a few movies before the ceremony, and I really appreciate you coming on, Kevin.
Oh, yeah, of course, man.
Yeah, of course. So we'll now turn to admire the work of another Oscar award-winning individual, Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction is widely seen as one of the most entertaining movies of all time. If you don't believe me, then just ask the near 1,850,000 IMDb voters that have ranked it as the 8th best movie of all time. It's easy to watch Pulp Fiction and be drawn into its genre-bending, non-chronological series of stories. However, it's harder to understand how it works to keep an audience entertained and involved. To answer that question, we need to first understand the mind of Tarantino himself. Then, we'll look at how he delivers the goods to an audience by starting Pulp Fiction with an intriguing concept, introducing interesting characters, and telling an innovative story. Widely seen as a walking cinema encyclopedia, Tarantino started his journey into the film world by trying to become an actor. Over time, he started to write scripts for bits that he would perform in his acting class.
Getting in touch with an audience beyond just myself, of what actually worked with audiences and what they liked.
These scripts kept on evolving to the point where Tarantino decided to start working on full-length screenplays. After 10 or so years of trying to get a feature made, he finally obtained over $1.5 million in funding to develop his debut film, Reservoir Dogs. It was seen as a breakthrough with its highly stylized dialogue and violence.
Come on, throw in a buck.
I don't tip.
You don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
You don't believe in tipping?
Tarantino developed this characteristic style even further when he wrote and directed his second film, 1994's Pulp Fiction. It opened to rave reviews and inspired many filmmakers to try to imitate Tarantino's movies in the coming years. To this day, viewers are enthralled by the film. But why? The answer to that comes in 3 parts: concept, characters, and story. These are the 3 cinematic elements that form the audience experience and, if done well, keep them entertained from start to finish. Because Tarantino is such a well-versed cinephile who has spent his whole life studying the cinematic medium, he understands how to utilize these 3 concepts to manipulate the audience.
I'm the kind of director that I want to play you as an audience. I want to be the conductor, and you're my orchestra. And the sounds that I make you to make and the feelings I get you to feel, and then I stop you from feeling those feelings and I give you something else to feel, and then I stop you from feeling that and make you feel something else yet again. Well, if a director can do that, if a director can pull it off, well, that's a real lucky audience member, because you've really had an experience that night. You went to the movies. That was worth leaving the house.
We'll start with the concept. The concept of a movie is the beginnings of plot mixed with the film's style. It can be hard to distinguish concept from story, but the best way to think about it is the concept is the initial idea of the film, while the story is what actually happens. In Pulp Fiction, the concept is a non-chronological, genre-bending, pop culture-filled crime film. That is the idea that Tarantino had in his mind when he started to write the script.
The whole idea of Pulp Fiction was the idea I was going to do 3 crime stories. Kind of like the stories you've seen a zillion times before, but I was just going to take them different ways. Let real life intrude on genre, and that's part of what I wanted to go with.
This concept is inherently innovative and new. He wanted to tell seemingly well-known concepts, but tell them non-linearly and chock full of dark comedic dialogue and countless cross-cultural references. And to add even more novelty, he was going to inject them with his own directing methods. In order to completely catch the attention of the audience, a film needs to have a concept like this that is, in some way, new and fresh. However, to hold the audience's attention, the film needs interesting characters, and Pulp Fiction has a lot of them. There's Jules Winfield, the Bible quote reciting hitman who was in a transitional period.
I'm in a transitional period and I don't want to kill you. I want to help you.
Or his partner, Vincent Vega, who has a habit of going to the bathroom at just the wrong time. There's also the tough boxer Butch Coolidge clinging to a trinket from his past.
Hit the watch team.
The gangster boss Marcellus Wallace, whose one goal was to hunt Butch down. And Marcellus's actress wife, who loves dancing and hates uncomfortable silences.
Don't you hate that?
Hate what?
Uncomfortable silences.
On top of all that, there's also Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer, who play the two amateur restaurant robbers.
I love you, honey bunny.
Everybody be cool, this is a robbery!
But perhaps the character that has stuck with fans the most is the Wolf. He comes into the film late as a cool, composed, well-dressed man who fixes a sticky situation for the gangsters.
I'm with the Wolf. I solve problems.
The stories of all these people intertwine throughout the course of the story, and they build on the concept that Tarantino explained earlier. He's taking classic tropes and injecting them with his style and storytelling. This style is largely built on very unique characters getting themselves into gruesome situations, all while referencing pop culture.
Every time my fingers touch brain, I'm Superfly TNT. I'm the Guns of the Navarone.
The clever and hilarious dialogue reveals character and keeps the audience hooked, while the character's actions keep the plot moving in an exciting direction. By combining a concept that will grasp the viewer's attention with characters that also entertain them, he's giving the audience exactly what they want to see. So Tarantino has the concept, he has the characters, and now he has to write what actually occurs in the film. He has to write the story. The manner in which Pulp Fiction tells its story is one of the most crucial parts as to why it was a cinematic breath of fresh air at the time.
However, a good majority of movies that come out, all right, you pretty much know everything you're going to see in the movie by the first 10 or 20 minutes. Now that's not a story.
He understands how to manifest the concept into a story that will play well with audiences. Like he mentioned in the clip played earlier, we've all seen the guy taking the boss's wife out. We've all seen the boxer refusing to fix a fight. We've all seen the hitman gangster story. We are able to predict where these stories would end up if they were told only as a situation rather than a story. The guy would get too close to the wife, the boxer would win the fight and eventually defeat the mob boss, the hitman would do their job and eventually get taken down by the police. Where Tarantino thrives is when he departs from these basic expectations and throws the audience a curveball. The boxer ends up captive in a basement alongside the mob boss. The boss's wife overdoses after dinner. The gangsters accidentally shoot someone in the face in broad daylight. These twists and turns plan what the audience believes is going to happen and gives them a unique experience.
Audiences didn't even realize how attuned they had got to the contrivances of movies because they were so used to it. So you could use that against them. You could leave the breadcrumbs that would indicate that you were going to go the way all the other films had gone. And then all of a sudden you make a quick left turn, and they're not prepared for that.
The audience doesn't want to see the same exact thing for the 1000th time. They want to see a new take on classic storytelling narratives. In order to captivate the viewing public, a film needs to have a writer and director that understands the medium of film well enough to grasp how an audience will react to the cinematic techniques. Perhaps more importantly, it needs to creatively build a unique concept, create compelling characters, and tell a story rather than a situation in order to resonate with the viewers. Because of Tarantino's expansive knowledge of cinema, he was able to utilize all of these tools to create the audience-pleasing masterpiece that is Pulp Fiction.
Oscar Award winner Roger Deakins is regarded as one of the most influential cinematographers of all time. He's known for his long list of accolades as well as distinct visual techniques. The renowned cinematographer started life in the small seaside town of Torquay in southwest England. Sir Roger Deakins spent his early years studying graphic design at the Bath Academy of Art, particularly the photography of Roger Maine, whom Deakins himself would cite as an inspiration for his own later works. Shortly after graduating college, Deakins was accepted into the National Film School of England, where his camera work impressed director after director. One of Deakins' first major successes was George Orwell's 1984, where he became the first Western cinematographer to use filming techniques that would become influential in cinema over the next decade. From here, Deakins' career would catapult forwards. Through long-standing collaboration with the Coen brothers, and his work on movies such as The Shawshank Redemption, A Beautiful Mind, Fargo, and Blade Runner 2049, Sir Deakins holds, among a myriad of other honors, 15 Academy Award nominations, 2 actual Academy Awards, has been accepted to both the British and American Societies of Cinematography, and has even been knighted by the Queen of England herself. This list of honors is a direct result of Deakins' unique cinematography style, which focuses heavily on the lighting and framing of a shot. Deakins is a master of staging lighting effects that are maintained through post-production. Sir Deakins is heavily involved in most scenes he's a part of, through detailed storyboards and scouting of locations. Some of his favorite lighting techniques include high contrast and silhouette lighting. Deakins is also a massive fan of digital recording over physical film, specifically because digital film and effects can be viewed while filming as they would appear in the final cut. The greatest compliment to his work Deakins ever received was from a fellow cinematographer over the film Jarhead. Deakins was asked how long they'd filmed in Kuwait. Deakins' response was that he'd only ever used Universal Studios stages 11 and 12. He achieved the realistic backgrounds by installing vertical lights in the ground and editing in footage of an oil field. Roger Deakins will be known for decades to come for his influential shots and in-depth involvement in the numerous films he's worked on. Make sure to be on the lookout for his upcoming release, Vivo.
And with that, this episode of Inside the Silver Screen has come to a close. Be sure to check out all the other content on our KBVR-TV channel that includes Geeking Out About It, Locals Live, and a variety of other interesting content. Our next episode will be available in 2 weeks, but until then, keep watching more movies.